There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Twilight Highlight Zone. I'm your host, Jeff Cork, joined by my good friend, Ben Hanson.
Hello, Jeff Cork.
So this is let's get the numbers here. This is complicated. This is the second episode of our podcast from the fourth season of the show, covering episodes of the show, episodes 4 through 6.
Episodes.
I think this is going to be an episodic episodes.
Yeah.
So, speaking of episodes, are we just going to dig right in here? Talk to me. What's the format? Have we come upon like what we're going to do?
I think I was surprised by how well the long form went last time.
Okay. So we're just going to keep at it?
Let's go ahead and try it.
All right, we'll do it.
I think there's less twists and turns, but there's probably going to be more stuff we forget in this 3 block.
Okay. I have to tell you, I'm gonna start off with he's alive.
Oh,
okay?
Frankenstein's story.
He's alive, exactly. Good old nuts and bolts and lightning bolts and all that stuff. This episode, as I was watching it, I was thinking, there's no way I'm going to be able to describe this without giving away what they think is a really major twist almost immediately. So should we pretend? Let's see if we can keep the twist going, okay?
Okay.
So here we go. He's alive. Start off on the same bustling nighttime, well, it's not that bustling, but a nighttime street scene that we've seen tons and tons and times on the episode.
It's kind of a rundown looking street. Like when it opened, I thought it was like a post-apocalyptic story.
But it's not.
No,
it's just your run-of-the-mill hate monger story. So we have a young Dennis Hopper as Peter Vollmer.
Did you recognize him right away as Dennis Hopper?
Instantly.
It is at maybe the 35-minute mark. I finally made the note. This guy looks like young Dennis Hopper. And I was like, wait a minute. When he's getting passionate, it is 100% Dennis Hopper.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's got himself a little club. And it's kind of a fascist thing. And he's standing on what I believe is a literal fruit box, a soapbox of. So he's standing on there and he's talking about how Americans need to stop with the Catholics, knock it off with these people, and he's pointing to people in the crowd, trying to rally the troops, so to speak, to join his cause, which is him and like 4 dudes who have like the same uniform. It's kind of unclear what his message is, but it's clearly some kind of like Nazi-esque rhetoric.
Yeah, they're really going for the Hitler imagery right away with him really letting his arm go all out on this tiny, rickety little stand.
Exactly. And then eventually the crowd is just like, you know what, this pretty much sucks. So they just start a fight.
Well, to be fair, he's kind of stumbling a little bit too. He doesn't do the greatest job with his speech. Yeah,
I guess the material, to be fair, his material it sucks to begin with. There's no way you can really spin this stuff to be great. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't really deliver it well. He's sweating a lot.
But he bashes, blacks and Jews and communists. Mm-hmm. But I took special notes that he really let the communists have it. Like that's the one they really hit the hardest in that opening speech, written by Rod Serling, really trying to get it to America a little bit. Like, hey, how different are we, really?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, go on.
So then there's a big fight. And then the police come, and the policeman comes and says something to the effect of, you stink. I'm paraphrasing here, but he like helps the guy up, and he's like, oh, here. And he goes to hand him the flag, and it's a classic fake out of dropping the flag.
So the cops give him a hard time.
Yeah.
He then goes into an alleyway, which is clearly where he hangs out a little bit too much. And then just breaks down and starts crying. So it's like, oh, I couldn't quite reach him. I couldn't get through to him.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't think that maybe it looks like it's nighttime, maybe 8 p.m. standing on a box of fruit and just spewing hate. Maybe this is just a waste of time. World War II was just a fairly recent memory for these people. And
yeah.
So anyway.
Well, to be fair, I mean, it's not like he has Nazi propaganda all over him. All he has is like
It's a fist with lightning bolts.
It's like it's a Statue of Liberty torch with a lightning bolt behind it. Yeah.
It's a pretty cool logo.
It's not bad. That's probably the only reason he was able to recruit those 3 or 4 other guys, which really that's the real mystery of the story for me is who are these other guys?
Yeah.
Because this guy is just a crying, bumbling mess, and these guys still look up to him.
Yeah. I have to say that if I came into work and you started crying, I would have a difficult time working with you. But that's my own problem. So
never mind the hate propaganda.
Never mind the hate propaganda. I'm totally fine with that. Whatever. So anyway, they go. they all disperse. Yeah, see you later. Once you're done crying, we'll have to do this again sometime. And, and he goes upstairs to the apartment of his mentor, you learn, who just happens to be a Jewish guy.
Who was in Dachau.
Who was in Dachau, of course. He's still crying, and he's just saying, what a bad time he's having. And Ernst, as gently as possible, is just saying, you know what? I let you stay on my couch. Maybe it's time you look for something better to do with your life.
I've known you since you were a young boy.
Right. And then they kind of do the speech that they're having a conversation for our benefit, explaining basically that this guy, his mom was in no condition to mother. His dad wasn't part of the picture. So basically, this guy was a father figure to him. And apparently not a very good one. It's just...
So this is the real question is, where do Pete's viewpoints come from?
Yeah.
Clearly not from the friends, because they're looking up to him.
Right.
It's not like they taught him.
Right.
His only friend, it seems like, or like real mentor, is this Jewish guy that was in Dachau, who's the sweetest guy on earth.
Yes. He hangs out at a candy shop, as we'll find out later. That's how sweet this guy is.
So it's that weird thing. So they're in the apartment having the conversation, and like he's making it clear, like, hey, I was in Dachau. This is some dangerous stuff you're spewing.
Yeah.
But Pete never really engages him in an argument. He's just so busy crying.
Mm-hmm.
He's never like, this is just what I believe, damn it. Like, he never stands up for anything.
No. I wonder how much of that is like, what does he really believe, ultimately? Just
the point of the scene is to show that he's a flawed human being.
Yes.
And he's really sad on the inside. And like the whole lesson
in
the early segments of this episode is, this guy's just hollow on the inside, hurt by his parents abandoning him.
And as abundantly clear, this is an hour-long season. So anyway, we fast forward a little bit, okay? And Peter sees a shadowy figure, quite literally, cloaked in shadow.
Only the face.
Only the face. A thick Germanic accent.
Really a bad accent, but I think they're going for German.
Well, we don't want to tip our hat.
Could be anything.
Could be anybody.
Anybody could be alive.
Anybody could be alive. He's alive. So he says, "Hey, heard what you're doing out there. It's not great, but I like your message. If I may offer you some pointers." So he says, "You need to use these gestures, and you need to speak from here, and
connect with your audience.
Connect with your audience. Make them seem like they say that." We don't like minorities. Well, we're the minority. And, apparently that really resonates with him. So we fast forward and he's giving the speech and people are in this hall and they're calling, all right, not bad.
They're getting on board.
Smattering of applause. Okay. So then Peter later on sees this guy again. And the guy says, okay, here's the deal. If you really want to connect, your movement needs a martyr. And Peter's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, you need to find someone who's weak in your organization. You got to take him out. And then that's that.
And so his plan is that he tells his other goons that one of them has been talking to the cops.
Yeah.
And that he has to die, which is a very funny idea because what? The cops were standing right there. They already heard everything he was saying. It's not like they have some grand plan.
No.
He just stands in front of people and shouts about how much he hates the blacks and the Jews.
Exactly. Their end game is very peculiar.
So they can't have the cops knowing, but apparently this guy squealed to the cops about the stuff that he was screaming in the street. And so then that guy's murdered.
They take him out.
And it's hints of The Mirror where this guy is getting kind of drunk on his own power and becoming paranoid. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the martyr they all needed.
And there's a classic moment somewhere in there where he's like talking to this shady figure, and the guy comes in and he's like, who are you talking to? So is it all in his head? I don't know.
Who can say? Anyway, they have yet another rally, and this is a rally like, hey, things are real. They just took out one of my men. We have a martyr. Yeah,
they have like a big poster of the guy.
Yep. They got a poster outside that has a picture of what's the actor's name? Dennis Hopper.
Yep.
And it says like tonight in big letters.
Yeah, and there's like pictures of Hitler and all kinds of bad guys up there.
Pictures of who?
Hitler.
Huh.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. How's that work?
Across the street at the candy store, Ernst, and he's hanging out with his buddy
Young,
and he sees all these guys, and he says, "You know what? I stood by before when this was going on. Someone should really do something." And then he's like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So he goes in there right as Peter's doing his speech, and he's talking about minorities and whatnot. And Ernst goes up there and basically takes the mic. And he's just saying, like, what are you talking about? This is ridiculous. This whole movement is absurd. And then, doesn't he slap?
Yes.
Peter slaps him. And it's like, what? That's your retort? Is you resort to violence.
Well,
all you could do is hit.
Yeah, as this guy is kind of starting to trash him a little bit, the crowd, it's cutaways to the crowd, they're like, mumbling to themselves. And then, like, his goons are whispering to him, like, you're losing the crowd. This old man standing next to you insulting you is apparently losing the crowd. It's
quite
for
a
you.
Distraction. This is before they had laser pointers.
Yes,
in mind.
yes, exactly.
So he hits the old man. He's like, don't make me hit you. Don't make me hit you. And then he hits him. And then Ernst leaves triumphant. And that's that for the time being. But then the shadowy figure says, what you need to do now is you need to take out the old man. You know, he's obviously part of the problem. You got to kill him. And
Pete is yelling at this shadowy figure, saying, "Oh, I can't do that. He's my trusted friend. Who are you anyway? Come out of that darkness. Get out of that darkness." And then the shadowy figure says, "As for being in the darkness, I invented darkness." And then he steps out of the shadows. It is the worst Hitler lookalike you can possibly imagine. Just use the Hitler they've already established in the show, the canonical Hitler. Yeah. It looks like every once in a while you get like a worn out dollar bill and someone has drawn like a Hitler mustache on George Washington. That bears more of a resemblance to Adolf Hitler than the actor they hired for the role. Plus, it's weird to have somebody impersonating Hitler directly in front of a giant picture of Hitler. Oh, because all it does is just show you this is not Hitler, clearly. And we're sorry. We're so sorry. We could do. Yeah. I can imagine. Okay, we'll get to this in a little bit. But anyway, so basically Pete runs up. He runs away from Hitler. Like, that's the weird part. Is Hitler's his number one idol. He's hanging pictures, and then Hitler comes out of the shadows and is like, "I got a few more pointers for you." And Pete loses it and runs away. Right. Really acting like this guy's the boogeyman. Exactly. Into the arms of Ernst, who he then proceeds to shoot. It's a pretty tense scene, though. I will say, like, he pulls the gun, and they have to have their dramatic standoff. More rhetoric about, like, oh, is this all you know, violence, yada, yada, yada. You're all alike. And did you think he was going to shoot him? I was sure of it. Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. I was not sure if it would turn into a sappy episode where they reconcile and really yuck it up together. Yeah. Doesn't happen. He shoots him, and then Ernst says a long speech as he's dying. Oh, yeah. On and on. Then he falls down, and he says something like, God, what is he? There's a little conversation where he says something that I feel like I'm made out of steel. Yeah, that's his big statement that he goes back to again and again. It's like, oh, I'm steel now. I'm steel. Yeah. He gets back to the theater, and he's very proud of himself, and he's going on and on to Hitler about how he's steel now. Yep. And he starts screaming, "We are immortal. We are immortal." Mm-hmm. And then the cops bust through. That's right. And take him down. And then they had the old gut shot. And then, And then he gets shot, and he goes back to where he was crying in the beginning of the episode, which looks like almost the exact same spot that the hobo found the shoes in that one episode. Yep. Remember this? I remember this. And so in the Hitler episode Dead Man's Shoes. Dead Man's Shoes, thank you. He dies in that spot. Mm-hmm. And then you see a shadowy figure on the wall as if the spirit of Hitler is leaving this man. And Serling's narration comes in and kind of spins it like, who's Hitler going to go on to next? Yes. Hitler lives in all of us. As long as there's hate speech and lack of tolerance around the world, Hitler will come for you. So it's weird that it's the exact same spot physically, and also kind of the same message of like, oh, this spirit's going to live on, either in shoes or through Hitler's mustache. It really is the unified Twilight Zone theory. It's leaving the door open for that. Because what if someone put on Peter Vollmer's shoes and went after Hitler? It could all work together. Plus, we don't know if this is the real Hitler or if this is a genie-created Hitler. Actually, I thought that's where this whole episode was going. Like in the beginning, with Serling's speech, he says something like, Peter's life's about to change once he encounters something from the sewers, is the way he pitches it. And so I figured, like, oh, is this going to be some sort of lamp in the sewers? Like some mystical object he encounters? And it turns out it was a metaphor, Cork.
Yeah.
For the Third Reich.
Yeah, it really was.
So the whole speech at the end, too, is trying to paint it as if Hitler is a boogeyman, more of like a supernatural.
It's like they were describing the Grinch.
Yeah, it was really weird to take the angle on Hitler. Like, he's not bad enough as history puts him. Now we're trying to spin him as this supernatural entity that can take over a society.
Mm-hmm. His ideas are so poisonous. Yeah, interesting.
So this episode went on for a while. I really, like, the second they showed the shadowy figure of Hitler, this episode got so much better. Don't you agree?
Wow. I have to say, the second that Hitler showed up, I was like, okay, that's Hitler. And this is going to be a long one. Because it just seemed like, I don't know. I am not doing a good job of articulating this. But I don't like the idea of the messenger in a story who someone always has to come and report back to. I think that's kind of boring. It just seems like, just say your piece once. Get it over with. I understand for the purpose of this, you gotta parse out these things because it escalates. You can't just immediately open up with, here's the deal, you gotta kill the Jewish guy that you're buddy with.
Right. Seems like the pretty natural first step.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like a glaring omission. But there is a nice speech from Ernst, the Jewish guy, before he walks into the hall, where he just goes on about like, because everyone else in the society is kind of looking down on this guy's rise to fame, like, oh, can you believe another one of these guys? What a real whack job, yada, yada, yada. And Ernst is like, well, I was in Germany, in the 20s and 30s, and we all thought that the brown shirts. One of them is Firefly fans, and one of them are Nazis, and I always get it confused. But they're like, oh yeah, we always thought they were whack jobs too, and it can happen to any society at any point. True. I thought that was interesting.
Now, this is something I never thought I would say, but one of the coolest powers that Hitler had, though, and we didn't talk about this, was they were late on their payment of renting the hall.
He can get cold, hard cash fast.
And Hitler can drop off an envelope full of money. And it was great because Peter did the thing where he drops the money, kind of like the flag was dropped for him.
Mm-hmm. He's a real jerk. I kind of liked seeing this weird, hate-filled startup group struggling. Yeah. Like, I like the idea of a Nazi starting out and just bumbling his way through a speech and then crying because he knows that he didn't communicate well enough. And then, like, seeing them backstage after he'd give one of his speeches and he'd be, like, high-fiving his buddies, like, yeah, we did it. Good show, guys. We got a real good crowd out there. It's weird to say, but I like seeing that storyline because I don't think I've ever seen the behind the scenes of a startup movement like that. You know,
it's kind of like 8 Mile in a lot of ways when you really think about it.
When him and Ernst got into that rap battle, that was
exactly
pretty killer. My name is Ernst.
It's not great.
But I thought it was cool, and like, them struggling for rent, and they're so excited, and then the dumb landowner or like guy who owns the theater comes in and is like, you can't just keep doing this here. Like, this costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
I
just wonder, like, what kind of people would go to that? You know, you see the guy obviously in some kind of Nazi-esque uniform in a poster says, tonight, are you so hard up for entertainment in this town?
Right.
You're just like, let's go.
It would have been more interesting if he was more subtle about it. Like, it wasn't so much like, oh, down with Jews. Here's a picture of Hitler behind me.
Yeah.
If he was just, a little more adamant. And they did try and play it up with him, like, with the pro-America, rah, 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 like, do it for the homeland. This country's so great, yada, yada, yada. And that would have been more interesting if he was just this, ultra pro-American guy that started to veer into the dark that was being supplied by Shadow Hitler the whole time.
Yeah.
Instead of just hitting it over the head to the point, like you said, where you see people in the crowd and it's like, well, what are they doing? What do they think this is? This would be a more interesting lesson if they're more subtle about it.
Maybe if the message had been delivered by telephone, in all seriousness, I'm just making this up as I go along.
Please.
And it wasn't until the end that is revealed who's on the other end physically, like he finds out where the call is being made from and then like sees the guy walking away and grabs his shoulder and sees, oh my God, it's Hitler.
Because there's not a single person that can watch this and not immediately know that it's Hitler.
Oh, it's
on the Shadow Street. Think of like how they butcher this reveal compared to the one in the hospital.
Oh, Eye of the Beholder?
Eye of the Beholder.
They do an entire episode about that, yeah.
And that was 20 minutes, and it was so subtle, and they pulled it off. And this, it's just, it cannot be more obvious.
No.
But since I like seeing the whole startup movement from a new point of view, I gave this one a 6.
I gave it a 6 also.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Cool.
6 buddies.
All right. Next episode is Mute. So this one opens in Dusseldorf in 1953, and there is a secret pact going on where there's people sitting around a table, and they all agree that they're going to develop their telepathy.
Can I just join in for one moment?
Yeah.
The most prominent member of this group just happens to be the SS dude from Death's Head Revisited.
Right. Also the lead scientist bank robber from the one where they go into the future.
Yeah. So that really poisoned the well for me.
Yeah, 2 Nazi episodes back to back.
Woof. Okay, anyway, I'm so sorry.
But maybe he's not so bad this time around.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right. So that actor's in it. They're sitting around this table. They all agree that they are going to work on communicating through their minds. And there's a little side conversation where one of the couples is like, well, I don't know about this because it's going to influence our children. Like if we have kids, we're going to raise them this way and it could ruin their lives. But they all signed the pact anyway. It then jumps forward in time, and there's a house fire. Firemen are standing outside it watching the house burn. And they're like, oh boy, it's a shame. There's a little girl in there too. Well, what are you going to do?
Fire is so hot.
And then it's revealed that the little girl got out. And so there is this girl, like 10, 8, somewhere around there.
Let's go 10, 11.
All right, 10, 11. This girl, her parents were in the fire. They died. Another couple who they start to hint and then just flat out say that they also had a daughter who had died previously. Mm-hmm. They adopt this girl.
This is the sheriff and his wife.
Right. And they find out quickly that this girl does not speak.
She's mute.
She's mute, some would say. And so those putting it together might just imagine that she is the daughter of a couple from the pact in the beginning 10 years ago, or whenever that was.
Yep.
So this couple, the mom in the couple is a little nutty, and she is getting very, very attached to this mute girl. And they start to play up more and more the idea that like their daughter died. The mute girl can also read people's minds.
She kind of does this weird thing where you see like video from inside the skull of what a person was doing or thinking. It's never like really made like totally clear.
This is my big beef with the episode. There's so many things that just are not made clear. So it does like a dumb digital zoom into her mind, and then it shows what somebody else is doing because she can only communicate through thoughts. But the other part that's confusing is like she can't hear or she doesn't know spoken language.
Yeah, because when they do like show how it's represented to her ears, it's just a bunch of like babbling murmurs.
Right. But it's always all over the place. I think it'd be more interesting if she could hear and she was like attempting to speak, but she just has kind of this snooty, smug look on her face the whole time. And apparently she's just like a kid that's like blind, you know, like she just can't hear anything.
Yeah.
So she's struggling with life. Parents are struggling with her. They eventually bring in a teacher. The teacher is very strict, and she says that it's a good thing that her parents died in that fire.
Very good thing.
Because her parents did not talk hardly at all, and they didn't raise her right. And the teacher promises that they're going to make her just like everybody else.
Right.
And so she clearly doesn't want to go to school. The mom wants to make her happy. The dad thinks it's a good idea to send her to school. And then in the meanwhile, the people in the pact had been communicating through letters. They had met in Dusseldorf, spread across the world, and communicated once a month through letters.
That was part of the pact. You have to write letters to people once a month.
Apparently. It's like pen pals or something.
Yeah.
And then the sheriff knew about these letters, and so he was trying to communicate, or he had received the letters from the house that had burned down, and the mom didn't want the daughter to be taken away, and so she secretly burned the letters, which the young girl saw and tried to stop, but didn't get there in time.
Right.
And there's a cool moment when the young mute girl realizes that she's alone. Like she knows that these other kids and these other families exist across the world, but now the mom has ruined her one shot of actually communicating with them. And she's screaming in her mind.
Then she runs out of the house down Icing the Body Electric Street.
Yeah.
Where she overcome by strangers, and then you just hear this awful cacophony of people yelling, and the mom helps by saying, leave her alone, leave her alone, leave her alone.
God, speaking of the mom being crazy, there's also that shot where she reads her mom's mind, and it jumps back in time to when the mom found out that her daughter drowned. And so it's just the mom in the kitchen, and then the door opens, and there's like a sheriff holding her daughter, and the sheriff, or I guess it's not the sheriff, but somebody in the town just says, oh, we found her swimming in the lake. And then the mom just loses it immediately. Yeah. There's no like, oh, is she okay? Is she alive? Yeah. Basically, they just walk in saying like, oh, we find your daughter swimming in the lake. Yeah. And she just screams like I've never heard anybody scream before. Yeah. It's really traumatic.
I didn't like to see that part.
Also, the mom is a little bit too old for the husband.
You think so?
She's older and a little nutty looking. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't think that was a good match. Throw that out
One of the worst in the Twilight Zone?
That's right.
Okay.
Okay, so the mute girl gets sent to school, which is a really bold move because she can't even communicate, she can't read, she can't do anything. And now she has to stand in front of a class, and the teacher is just apparently going to take up all this time to try and get her to say her own name, saying, your name is Elsa. Your name is Elsa, over and over again. And she cannot handle it.
Now, eventually, the teacher figures out, through some unexplained reason, that what's going on is that she's actually telepathic, because the teacher thinks what does she think? Like, I know that you can hear me. Yeah. And then the girl, like, there's a spark of recognition, and she's like, I know what's going on. My parents did the same thing with me.
And the daughter's like, oh, or Elsa's like, oh, interesting. Okay. Like, she's on board. Maybe she actually has somebody to communicate to.
And then she's just like, they thought that they wanted to raise me clairvoyant so I could talk to the dead too.
And then Elsa's like, no, that's not what's going on. I'm not a medium. I'm not a medium.
Yeah.
That was one of the weirdest moments when it was revealed that the teacher was raised to be a medium.
Just out of nowhere.
And then it doesn't really go anywhere.
No.
Oh, no, I guess it does, because she then makes the entire class, instead of screaming, your name is Elsa, Elsa, they make all the students in the class think in unison, which is very impressive. They're all thinking, your name is Elsa, your name is Elsa, and like her mind is shattering and she can't handle so many voices in her head.
Right.
Then that's that. So now the twist is that the German, are they even German? I don't know, but some couple.
They're German.
The couple with the guy who's been in previous episodes as the SS officer, they come because they found out that it was weird that they didn't receive a letter. So they assume the worst about this family.
They get directions from a hobo.
Yep.
Who steals the scene and our hearts. Some kind of wood carving? Is that what he's doing?
I don't know, man. I'll say yes.
Yeah. But kind of a weird comic scene because they're looking for City Hall.
Right.
The police. How do you say, the constable?
Yeah, yeah.
He said, turn around. And then they go to the building, and there it is. It was such a weird moment.
It was weird.
What is going on with this?
They're trying to shove a little character personality into these two characters where there really isn't much.
Yeah.
So through the letters, they have kind of learned that Ilsa, it's kind of like a chosen one story where like she was really taking to telepathy, and
because she was raised that way.
Right. But they talk about how there's other kids, but apparently she was the
best.
Purest. Yeah, the best that ever was, that kind of thing. Apparently all it takes is not talking to your kid for a couple of years and
think at them. Because remember they showed like her learning like a picture of a boat, and he would just like show it to her, and then she'd look at it really hard, and then it would be like animated.
Yeah.
The boat was like sailing on the page.
Yeah, but it was just this weird scene of her learning things where, it would show a boat, she'd stare at it for a while, and then the father would nod and then go to the next flashcard. It's like, how do you know learning is going on here? You're just slowly shifting through pictures.
To be honest, that's what I think homeschooling is like. So, anyway.
All right, so the German couple eventually finds Ilsa and want to take her away. And then something, the mom of the German wife kind of, what? Okay, so here it is. So they get to the home, and they want to take Ilsa away. Ilsa comes home from school that day with her brain fried because the teacher, who was also a medium, made the kids chant so much in her head that like she can no longer communicate through telepathy.
Right.
Because like it's cool because you get to hear how she hears it, and it's kind of this garbled, digital sounding mess. And then she breaks her vow. Not even a vow. She breaks her barrier of what she was capable of doing before by saying that my name is Ilsa out loud.
Yep, and then that's all she can say, and she breaks down in tears.
Yeah, so the German couple realizes that she's really no good at this point as far as that whole side. So they decide to leave her with her, and the German wife gives a speech about how love is more important than telepathy. The love of a good mother is the key ingredient here. So they're going to leave her with this adopted family.
Yep.
And that's the end of telepathy.
That's as we know it. This is such a weird, like... So, what I love about this episode is that it just starts off with these people at a table, and it's just like this foregone conclusion. Well, we all know that people are capable of human telepathy.
They say that like people started out that way, and that we learned to speak over time. Yeah.
So we're just gonna do this again. So everybody sign your name here. Let's take the pledge. Okay, you have a few reservations. No big deal. Moving on. Done.
Right.
10 years later. I just like how like this one just hits the road and the tires squeal. It's like, you got a whole hour here, people.
Yeah.
You can breathe a little bit.
Yeah, I wish the entire episode kept up with that pace.
Yeah.
And we got to see kids all over the world trying to deal with their telepathy instead of sticking on this one girl. The little girl, I don't think she did a great job. Like, she wasn't exactly an empathetic character. It was just,
I thought she did all right.
really, I couldn't read her. It was just frustrating. It's like, I don't know what she's capable of. I don't know what she's hearing. I don't know what she's sending out there into the world.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the episode was just thinking about, this secret cult across the world and her being completely isolated from them, screaming out, trying to communicate, and no one can hear her. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I didn't like the mom much.
Didn't like the mom.
Didn't
Thought she
care
was a
for
little
her.
too old, apparently.
Little wrinkly.
I wish I knew more about how telepathy worked. Like, the fact that they're still writing each other letters tells me that it doesn't travel very far. One cool detail, though, is remember the parents in one last act of love.
Yes. The original
Telepathically,
parents.
the ones who died in the fire moved their daughter with the power of their mind to safety while she was sleeping.
How was that made clear again? I know
Telepathy.
the German wife said it, but like, how do they know that?
Telepathy. That's pretty much the answer for everything in this episode. Either that or she's clairvoyant. Maybe she is a medium and she spoke to the parents from beyond the grave.
Talked to the teacher, got a little inside scoop.
Yeah. What a weird factoid to bring up to a pupil. Like, I got the jig is up. You're going to be a medium.
Quiet lady I've known for a day. They really painted that teacher to be worse than Hitler from the previous episode.
Yeah, you could tell when she was coming up the steps. It's like, oh, she's one of these characters.
Yeah,
like
strict teacher.
Yeah.
Basically a weird nun. So I ended up giving this one a 4.
Really?
Did you like this one?
I like this one actually more than He's Alive.
What'd you give it?
I gave it a 7.
I'm going to sit back and let you explain that more.
You want me to explain it more? You were actually sitting back. I just thought that the premise was interesting, and I was genuinely curious to see where it was going, and it was kind of it was really sad at the end, I thought. How they like broke this little girl
out of being special,
but at the same time you're like, well, technically, if you want to look at it, and you don't have to look that hard, she was being raised in one of the most abusive situations possible because she was going to be completely dependent on her parents and their weirdo network of friends for the rest of her life. Because like when her parents died, I was going to say, well, when her parents died, what would she do? Well, we saw exactly for an hour what she would do, didn't we? So it pretty much negates that. But there was an absolutely abusive situation.
It was a good thing that she got out of there.
Yeah, definitely.
And now she's going to have the Helen Keller montage of slowly learning how to speak.
Yeah, if the ending, she's going to look at a picture of a boat triumphantly as it doesn't move. And that's the final lesson when everything
she jumps
clicks
in the air and then freeze frames.
Yep, exactly.
Credits. Do you think that if the vow of the silence, that previous episode, lasted for 10 years, that guy would eventually develop telepathy?
Oh.
If he was locked in that room for 10 years.
Wow. That's a good one.
For the unified theory?
For the unified theory.
One of those that we're going to forget immediately?
No, I'm writing these down.
No, you aren't. I see the napkin.
It's an elongated M, but it gave the illusion of writing.
All right. Moving on to an uplifting topic called Death Ship.
Death Ship.
Take it away, dude.
Death Ship. Okay. So in this one, we start off on a flying saucer. So if you just picture for a moment a flying saucer, that's it. That's what that's exactly what it looks like.
What's the year?
The year, it's 1997, of course.
Of course. Charlie's Angels just came out.
Man, fashion was doing that weird thing that didn't really line up with this episode, but that's okay. So we're on board this spaceship, this flying saucer, and there's 3 guys on there. And they're on a mission to travel the universe, trying to find planets that are hospitable to human life and colonization. So basically...
And get resources.
And resources, yeah. They kind of zoom above a planet. They have like a scanner, and if things look viable, they'll land, grab samples of plants, minerals, wildlife, what have you, and then head back up for the return voyage, okay? So one of the guys is on his little scope, and he sees a little glimmer of a flash. And he says, "Hey, I see something there." The captain, Paul, he's like, I can't be anything. Can't be anything at all. And the guy is like, "Well, I'm pretty sure I saw something. Can we?" Paul is just not having it. He's big production, being very dramatic about it. So they move the ship around. And lo and behold, they see it again. So they're like, "Why don't we go down and check it out?" So there's kind of an argument about whether or not they should do it. But eventually...
because one of them is very excited. Mason? No, Mason is the black-haired guy. The other guy, I forget his name. He's the one that's super excited about it maybe being alien life.
Oh, and he's like... I can't remember the exact term, but it's something like, you've got alien sighting fever or something like that.
Yeah, they make it seem like they've never contacted alien life. He's like, "This could be it. Oh my God, we've got to go down there."
Very excited.
Yeah.
So they prepare to land, and in doing so, they get into the most ridiculous chairs that I think I've ever seen in my entire life. They're like these slabs of foam rubber that someone has like methodically carved out an impression of like where a person would...
Including their butt cheeks.
Including their like really well-defined butt cheeks. So they sit in this impression, and then they have like a lap belt that this one guy, it takes him forever to put it on, and then they kind of put their arms in the thing. Okay, and they land. Okay.
Very smoothly, by the way. They get in these big production chairs, and
Yeah.
it's just like, all right, and then we just land and we're done.
Yeah. I've noticed, like, as we've been watching the show, just the various solutions that people have had for chairs.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. This is like the dumbest, but it functionally not as dumb as like office chairs. You see those in some of the episodes where they're just wheels. You're like, this is very practical, really. But anyway, so they land and they disembark, and immediately they see what was making the glint. It is a crashed ship that looks identical to theirs.
And the one guy, Mason, is saying, "It's from Earth, no doubt about it." And the captain of the ship's like, "We don't know that." He's like, "Oh, but look, it's from Earth. It's our exact ship." He's like, "We don't know that." Like, he's very adamant. Like, "We don't know anything. Everyone calm down." He's kind of just a naysayer
Exactly.
throughout this entire episode.
And this is the guy, it's Jack.
Jack Klugman.
Yeah, it's Game of Pool.
Mr. Game of Pool, yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Passage for Trumpet.
Mr. Passage for Trumpet. Yeah, just a jackass in every episode he's been in, really. Just woof. So anyway, yeah, the guy is even like, "It's got the same rocket assembly," and he's like, whatever. Maybe they're just a universal thing.
Yeah.
So they go inside the ship, and it's dark, and obviously it's been through a crash, so things aren't looking good. And the navigator is like, "Well, let's go into the cockpit," and he's like working on the door. It's stuck or something, and the captain immediately is just like, "Let's just get out of here. There's nothing here. Come on. You're not going to get it open." And the guy's like, "Well, wait, we got it open." And then it opens up, and they see 3 bodies. Okay.
Humanoid bodies.
What's more, they roll them over, and it's actually them.
You say that like it's a very quick reveal, but they really drag this out where it's everybody one at a time. The first guy is
there's
Mason.
Like stuff under, like on top of him.
Yeah. And they have to slowly reveal all these. Mason sees himself, really freaks out, gives a weird kind of laughing, crying, like,
yeah.
And then the big build up again in the music. And
Yeah.
they flip over the next guy, and then the third guy. And then they go back and check out the first guy again and compare ID cards, and they really take their time.
Yeah, they check the ID cards, and I mean, it's issued by the Interplanetary Board of Spacemen.
Right.
The names are identical. It is clear that they are, for all purposes, them. They are them. Okay, Ben?
Yeah, I got it.
So the captain is just like, well, this doesn't mean anything. We don't know what's going on. Let's go back onto the ship.
He says, yeah, so they keep trying to communicate back to Earth, but the radio isn't working, and he keeps yelling at Mason to keep trying to communicate. Mason's like, I can't do it. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
And then Paul starts screaming at him. He says, like, just can you do what I tell you to do just once? Just for once, take my orders. They're starting to kind of get a little stressed out on this planet.
Exactly. So then the third guy, suddenly you heard like an engine roaring.
Before this, there's a weird moment where Mason is standing there, and then it has a close-up of his face, and there's like the sound of an explosion.
That's what it is. Yep.
Yeah, and then Paul kind of like grabs him, and then he's like, oh, okay, back to it.
Yeah,
And
yep.
it's never, well, you can kind of guess what it is later, but.
Right. So then third guy, he just like kind of zones out, and suddenly he's on a road, and he's walking, and this guy comes out, and he's this hunting buddy from way back, and he's like, "Hey, what? You're back on furlough or something?"
And he's like, "I don't know.
I have no idea." So he's heading down the road, and then like this old lady's there, and she's like, "Oh, hi, nice to see you." And then she starts walking, and then his hunting buddy says, "Oh yeah, she's walking to town. She's still doing that every day. You want to go hunting with me?" And the guy's like, "No, I want to go home." So then he starts running, and then you see like exterior shot of a very spacey looking house. And he runs from room to room calling out his wife's name, and finally ends in the bedroom. There's a lot of sexy sculptures in this house, might I add. A lot of hubba topless looking ladies and stuff. Anyway, on top of the bed, there's a black veil, some black gloves, very artfully arranged, and then a card from a funeral home saying, or a telegram saying, regret to inform you, your husband was killed in a crash, blah, blah, blah. And then he comes to, and he's back on the UFO, and he's rightfully kind of freaked out. And he's been for a while, he's been like putting his hands on the sides of his face and like moving his skin around like it's made out of taffy.
Yeah, it's very much like the media representation of what it's like to get high.
Yeah.
Just constantly staring at your own hands, that whole thing.
Yeah. He just can't get over the fact that he saw a corpse that looked just like him.
Yeah. And so, as far as theories as to what was going on there, the captain's like, don't you remember in training, we learned about basically getting unstuck in time or making an extratemporal leap. He has some dumb way of describing it like that, so that they jump forward in time. And so his
forward or back in time. It's like the most convenient theory possible.
So his theory is that they are seeing that ship because that is a representation of what happens in the future. And so his interesting solution to make sure that they don't die like those people in the ship is to never let the UFO take off again.
Yes.
That they are just going to live on that planet, because if they never go up in the air, that means they can never come down and crash, which means they'll live forever.
And it's immediately met with resistance because it is the dumbest plan. Like,
it is the worst plan.
They're like, there's no food. Well, we'll scavenge, and we're running out of food. Well, there's got to be food over there. Well, how do we know if it's good to eat? Well, we'll look at the wildlife. I didn't see any wildlife, and maybe what's poisonous to us is actually the best thing for them.
That was the interesting part when they brought up the wildlife. Like, well, just follow what that wildlife does. It's like they were so excited about aliens earlier.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, well, the wildlife, like that's just alien wildlife. I mean, we need alien aliens.
Exactly.
There's a weird distinction in this episode.
And then the guy points out, well, we're going to run out of fuel too, because it's already like 13 degrees colder than when we landed.
Not to mention, two of us have families, and you, the captain, don't have family. Don't have a family.
Did point that out. So there's like instant, like, we should take a vote.
Yeah.
Because your plan sucks, basically.
And it did.
It was a really crappy plan.
Just never leave.
Right. So then Mason, he's just like, F it, and goes to bed. That's his solution.
Right.
So he wakes up, he's in bed, and then suddenly he's like by a creek.
He's by the pond that I think killed that old man and his dog in the hunt.
Oh my goodness. It could very well be.
Yeah.
And he sees Shirley Temple, or a girl who looks just like Shirley Temple.
Yep.
And she runs over and says, "Daddy, Daddy," and gives him a big hug and says, I thought you were lost, and come on, let's go see Mom, hang out and all this stuff.
And they walked through like Field of Dreams style corn or something tall.
Yeah. And he's just all over his wife, giving her a big old kiss. And
like they haven't seen each other for a long time.
Yeah. And she says, like, "You're getting this emotional over fried chicken?" And then
his wife goes, "Were you asleep?" And then she goes, "Are you still asleep?"
Yeah.
It's very confusing, but yeah.
And then suddenly that stupid Captain Paul comes from the Field of Dreams and grabs the guy and starts shaking him. He's like, "You have no right to take me," whatever. And then he wakes him up. And he's like, "I was just there." And then conveniently, the captain yanks from the Mason's front pocket the obituary for his wife and daughter, which immediately made me think, well, wait a minute. You just said you had a family.
Oh, interesting.
So where's your family you're talking about? I don't know. It's really crappy of me because maybe he's got like brothers and sisters and his parents are still alive and everything. But I immediately assume when someone's a space pilot, if they got a family back home, it's a wife and kids.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
They are dead.
Maybe he has a new wife and kids. Ones that he liked better.
There you go.
Yeah.
Even better. They're robots.
So they did hint at this a little bit earlier when the first guy got back. He talked about like, "Oh, my hunting buddy, he was shot and killed in a hunting accident. And then the old lady died too."
Yeah, so they're interacting with dead people.
Yes.
Basically. And there's a creepy part because when they look for Mason while they're talking about the space plan, Mason's gone, but there's like an indentation on the pillow where his head was. And they kind of gloss over, like the captain is just like, you were there, we just didn't see you. And he was like, "No, Mason was gone. He disappeared for a little bit." Because
they make it seem like the first guy didn't disappear.
Right.
But maybe because
standing there.
Maybe it was just because the captain saw him. He didn't want to admit that he didn't.
Right.
That he didn't disappear.
Right.
That he did disappear. Yeah, it was a little confusing there.
So then they decide, you know what? I see what's happening. I'm revising my plan. This planet is sentient, kind of. And
there's alien life on here that's messing with our minds.
Right. It's coming up with the ways that it knows will scare us, like showing us our bodies and interfering with our radio signals. It wants us to leave. Right. So we're going to leave.
Which is interesting to me, and I'm hoping you're on board with this. Have you ever read Sphere?
Yes.
Okay. Isn't that the same idea where it's like there's creating the realities of your worst possible fear?
Mm-hmm.
And I forget in that book if it's like aliens or how they explain it or why this is even happening, but something triggers in them for their worst possible fears to become a reality. And that's what it made me think of in this episode.
It's been like 20 years since I've read that.
All right. That's the next podcast is the Michael Crichton cast.
The Sphere cast. All right.
I can't wait.
What's
Anyways,
Crichton?
Yes. So they decide to leave.
Yes. So they hop into their big foam chairs, strap on their buckles, and blast off into space. And the dial that has their altitude spins like...
I have a real problem with this altimeter.
Its altimeter, it just spins like, what the is going on with this thing?
It's 9,000 miles.
Yeah.
9,000. Yeah, it has a representation of 9,000 miles on it. And as the rocket ship is taking off, which by the way is dumb because it's a UFO that has a rocket on the bottom. And when they show it, it's just the weirdest image because you never see a UFO with like an old fashioned NASA rocket.
Yeah, like a flare.
Yeah, so it's just slowly rising up like a rocket, which you wouldn't expect. Anyways, so as it's climbing up, the altimeter is just spinning wildly and the captain's reading it off like 10,000 miles, 20,000 miles. 30,000 miles. It's like, just make the altimeter represent more, and then you don't have to keep a mental track.
Make a bigger dial.
It really bothered me how many times that thing was looping, and he had to do that mental math.
Yeah. Fortunately, they get up there. They're like out of orbit.
They were making a lot of dumb faces on the way up, but
they were making, like, you could tell that they must have just shown like newsreels of like test pilots and centrifuges, and they're like, "Oh, this is what it looks like when a person's like getting pulled by G-forces." So they made them try to do that.
Right.
Because like they make like a really big stretched out grimace, and it's hard to watch.
Right.
Anyway, they're up there, and everything is great. They're like, okay, we made it. We can go back home to Earth. And the captain is like, nope.
Which is super weird.
The captain is just like, now that we know what's going on, Now we can go back down.
Now
and
we
get
know
our
that
samples.
we won't crash. Now we're on easy street. So let's land again.
And everyone's like, what are you talking about?
Including me.
Yeah, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
This is super dumb. So he grabs the controller and there's like a big like back and forth, and it seems as though the ship is going to crash.
So they fight over the controls about whether or not it's going to happen.
And you think like it does, like the camera angles like sideways, so you're like, oh, okay.
It starts to spin out of control, you know? And so everybody is like launched back into their seats and they're all like, the G-forces. And they do their whole dumb face again, except especially the guy on the right's really hamming it up. They eventually get the controls back and decide to land. And the UFO isn't there.
So they're like, they open like one of the little windows and they look out and they're like, see? No, and then Mason's like, well, how do we know we're facing the right direction?
Let's open up these 4 other windows and very slowly go around and check each because they're really taking up an hour.
They do that, and when you know it, the fourth one, there's the UFO.
So Mason at this point cracks and realizes we're dead. We've been dead the whole time. Stop trying to convince us that we're still alive. Clearly we died.
Yeah.
You need to let us die.
Yeah.
And the captain's like, nope.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
I don't believe it. Everything has a logical explanation. We just need to figure it out.
He keeps going back to that. Like, there must be a rational explanation for this, which is the exact same line. I mean, it's a classic line, but it's also the exact same line that they use in the first episode of this season, the In His Image or whatever, when the town's all weird. It's like, oh, there has to be a rational explanation for this. Anyway, so he denies them death, and then the episode jumps back to the very beginning when they see the sparkling object again and decide to go down to investigate. And so there we go. And Serling explains that it's another Flying Dutchman, which I think he even used that comparison when talking about the Odyssey of Flight 33.
Yeah.
It's like the exact same thing. It was like, well, this ship's out there doing this, maybe forever. Who can say?
Ugh.
This captain is so stubborn, he will not let himself and his comrades die.
Question.
Yes.
They're all dead.
Yeah.
Right? Is it morally wrong to choke the captain out because he's already dead?
So, but they don't. Okay, if they can get in the loop when before it resets, when they all realize that they are definitely dead, if they can shoot the captain, where's he going to go? Detroit?
I don't know.
I mean, I think that's totally fair. If just enough of them remembers the past or previous lives or deaths, I guess.
Yeah.
In their circle of death.
It's kind of a bummer of an episode, isn't it?
It really is quite the death ship, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
By the way, it's going to be confusing looking back on this one when we see the title, because it's going to be like, is this the one
with the wrench?
Yeah, with the wrench, or is this the one that's like Judgment Night, where the guy's viewing the one ship over
Death Ship Revisited?
Death Ship Revisited. It's the not asked for sequel.
Okay, so did you think that they were dead the whole time? Because I'll tell you what I thought after you tell me what you think.
That's a good question. I don't think I did. No, I don't think I really had a solid theory going through it. But,
you know what I thought it was, and I was hoping for, because I think it would have been an interesting story. I like to rewrite episodes of the Twilight Zones, because obviously I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I thought they were robots. And this expedition was just like they just threw out robot wave after robot wave. And the reason that the captain was reluctant to go there the first time is because he had some kind of programming like, hey, if you get a sense that another ship has already been here, stay away.
Oh, interesting.
And that's why they were the same. And I was thinking they need to like, when they like rolled the guy over, I was thinking he's going to have like a scar with like that part of his robot parts face, sticking out or something like that. But that never happened.
No, they just did the robot story.
Yeah. I think that they've done the where is everybody in the town story.
Not stopping them.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I don't think I had a really good theory. I think this one was really stretched out.
Yeah.
That said, I really like the idea of this commander not letting people die. I ended up giving this one a 7.
I like this one a lot.
Wow.
I gave this one an 8. Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, that's good old-fashioned Death Ship.
Yeah, this was probably my favorite of the season so far.
Okay.
And we've seen 6, so that's a pretty bold statement, isn't it?
Also, it was really refreshing to see a sci-fi episode again. Like right when this one started, I'm like, oh, thank God, a UFO.
Yeah.
All right, I can sit back and enjoy this. It's not going to be a mute girl in a burning house anymore.
Anytime that they talk about a year that was in the future to them, that's in the past to me, makes me feel so smug.
Yeah.
I love it. It's just like those jerks. We never built that. You idiots. Stupid little weird shoulder things. I would never wear a shirt like that. Did you notice that they had the Target logo on their shirts? That was like their little what would you call that? Their
insignia?
Insignium.
Well, that's
the Target logo.
That's why if you die in a Target store, you're not allowed to go to the afterlife.
Interesting.
You have to stay shopping forever.
Woof.
Even if you find your own corpse in the cereal aisle. Huh. This episode's
Why don't you
sponsored
let me
by Target.
die, Ben? Just let me die, Ben.
Good Lord. Speaking of wanting to die, we have a lot of season 4 to get through yet. We are so far from the end of this thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like the first episode we did for season 4, the long format worked better than this one.
Yeah.
Do you think it works?
The long format?
Yeah. I think it just gets so bogged down, and then I think this.
Are we recording this right now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I like talking.
So what does that mean?
I guess what would the alternative be? Going through
maybe there's
5 hours in a week?
Maybe no. Maybe there's a middle ground because first of all, this is already over an hour.
Okay.
So maybe we can just trim it down a little bit for the thorough explanations, but still give a pretty detailed play-by-play.
Okay.
Kind of like the speed you were going with the Hitler episode in terms of like, oh, first Hitler said this, then Hitler said this, then Hitler said this.
Okay.
But this is the point. People should write about it in the comments.
Yeah, please do. Because I think like an episode like Death Ship,
yeah,
I think that's a really meaty, interesting episode. And then it's something that I particularly like talking about. You know what I mean? Whereas like, I don't think that
Mute Girl,
He's Alive necessarily needs the same degree of play-by-play.
Okay, so let's keep it relatively breezy, but we have the option for episodes that are interesting.
How about I will make a set of cards at home tonight, and at the beginning of every episode, when we start doing a breezy, when you're doing it breezy style, I can go, I object, I'm playing my long form card. And at that point, the conversation will shift into a long format.
What if I hold up a flashcard of a ship?
A ship card? Oh.
A death ship.
Oh my gosh. We'll have to revisit this. This
Cool.
is really great banter.
This is the worst banter. All right, that about wraps this one up, Ren.
Yeah.
Take it away.
I feel great. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. And seriously, we're just making this up as we go along. So please leave your comments on if you want to like faster, shorter.
If you want us to just stop doing it.
Please, if you want to do that, just internalize it because it's very demoralizing.
Send it to us
We've already
telepathically.
watched like 6 episodes of season 4. And maybe if you don't like what we're doing, just say, oh yeah, keep it up, you assholes. And then we'll continue watching and just don't listen to it. So then we will have wasted a significant chunk of our lives. So there you go. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. And we will talk at you again next week.
Bye.